Have you ever felt like you had to handle everything on your own? Like asking for help meant you were weak? What if I told you the strength you've been searching for begins the moment you ask for help? This is the story of Aarav, a young man who believed he had to do everything alone. He grew up hearing phrases like, "Be strong," "Real men don't cry," "Handle your own problems." So that's exactly what he did. When he was a child, Aarav never asked for help with homework. When he was a teenager, he never shared his worries. And as an adult, when life started hitting hard, he wore his silence like armor. On the outside, Aarav looked calm, focused, responsible. But inside, he was breaking piece by piece. Aarav worked as a junior architect in a small firm. He loved his job, but the deadlines never ended. His boss wanted more designs, faster results, and perfect presentations. One evening, his manager handed him a big project, a chance to prove himself, but also a mountain of pressure. "Can you handle this alone?" his boss asked. And Aarav, without a second thought, said, "Yes, sir, I'll do it." He didn't ask for extra time. He didn't ask for help from his teammates. He just smiled and said yes. That night, he sat in front of his computer, eyes burning, hands shaking slightly as he worked past midnight. 1 hour turned into 2, 2 into 5. His coffee turned cold and his sketches began to blur. But still, he told himself, "I can't show weakness. I can't ask for help." Days passed. Aarav barely slept. He stopped talking to friends, ignored his mother's calls, and spent every second perfecting his design. But the more he worked, the worse it looked. Nothing seemed right. And then, one morning, his boss called him in. The meeting room was silent. His project was on the table, covered in red marks. "This isn't good enough, Aarav," his boss said quietly. "You could have asked the team for help." Aarav froze. His chest felt tight. His lips trembled, but he couldn't say a word. When he got home that night, he sat on his bed, head buried in his hands. He felt useless, weak, like he had failed. But deep down, another voice whispered, "Maybe you don't have to do this alone anymore." The next morning, Aarav made a small decision, one that would change everything. He walked into the office, took a deep breath, and approached his teammate, Mira. "Hey," he said softly, "can you take a look at this design? I think I need some help." Mira smiled, not in judgment, but in relief. "Of course," she said. "You should have asked earlier." Within minutes, 2 more colleagues joined in. They shared ideas, made small tweaks, and gave feedback that Aarav had never considered. By the end of the day, the design looked completely different, balanced, creative, and full of life. For the first time in weeks, Aarav smiled. That evening, Aarav sat at a park bench watching the sunset. He thought about everything that had happened. How strange, he thought. All this time, I thought asking for help made me weak. But it actually took more courage to admit I couldn't do it alone. He remembered his father's words from years ago. Be strong. But maybe real strength wasn't about carrying everything alone. Maybe it was about knowing when to share the weight. A week later, Aarav's team presented their design to the client. The project was approved instantly. Everyone clapped and cheered, but for Aarav, the real victory was internal. He had finally learned to let go of pride. From that day on, he made it a rule. If he didn't know something, he'd ask. If he was struggling, he'd share it. And in return, he helped others whenever he could. His relationships grew stronger. His confidence grew deeper. And for the first time in his life, Aarav felt free. You see,
Asking for help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to know your limits and brave enough to reach beyond them. We're all human, built to connect, to support, to lift each other. No one climbs a mountain alone. Sometimes, strength is not in saying, "I can do this by myself." It's in whispering, "I can't do this alone," and that's okay. Because when you ask for help, you're not just letting others in, you're letting yourself grow. Maybe right now, you're carrying something heavy, a problem you can't solve, a dream you can't reach, a pain you can't explain. But what if the answer isn't to fight harder? What if it's to reach out your hand and say, "I need help"? You might be surprised who shows up to lift you. Remember this, no one ever became weaker by sharing their struggle. They became stronger because they stopped pretending to be unbreakable. The power of asking for help is the power to heal, to grow, and to truly move forward.